Hey everybody, it's Eric Dorward with the Spartan Rocketry Club again, and we are continuing with our Black Brant 12 build here. Fins are still not done because they take just about forever, but in the intervening time, I'm going to start working with the plastic bits here. So before this, I took all these downstairs and into my paint shop, and I put on a plastic primer coat. So that's just it's clear paint, and the idea is that it bonds really well to the plastic surface because regular spray paint bonds, it bonds pretty well. I generally don't have any problems with it, but I want to be extra sure that the paint adheres very well to these things because I'm going to have to mask off certain segments and that kind of thing. And the last thing I want to do is build this complicated thing, finish painting, and then as I'm removing the tape, have chunks of it peel off, which would be incredibly frustrating. So putting on the plastic primer coat should help with that. I had a little bit of an incident with this one. It may or may not have fallen while I was trying to paint it, so I had to sand it down, but it's at least primed and I'm going to be painting over it anyway. So yeah, that was really annoying. Anyway, so let's put a couple of these away for the moment. The first thing that we need to do is some of the plastic parts in this need to get cut apart. So I've got my X-Acto blade here. In the past, I have attempted to do this with a Dremel tool as well, which, it works and it goes fast, but honestly, it goes kind of too fast. So this is perhaps one of those things where slower is better. And it is going to take some time. Since you are working with a blade, do be careful. Try not to cut yourself. Don't cut toward yourself if you can help it. Certainly keep your hand out of the way. Now, the first thing we need to do, apparently, is we need to cut this part off. We need to cut along this seam. And we need to cut this seam off. So my X-Acto blade right now is not super new. This is, you want a sharp blade for this. I'm not going to replace this one just quite yet because there's even worse stuff to do later, but I do have my thing of backup blades here ready to go. So I'm going to stick the blade into this groove, and I'm going to slowly and repeatedly etch it. Putting a good amount of pressure here, but I'm more interested in tracing this line accurately than really pushing hard. It's certainly possible that you could push right through your first try, but if you're pushing that hard, bad things might happen, like to your thumb, or less worryingly, to the piece of plastic here. So this is the second time I'm going around. I'm pretty close to cutting through. I can feel at this point the knife is like it's almost wanting to go through. There's some like softer spots, it feels like. But I should be pretty close to puncturing this pretty soon. And once that happens, things tend to go pretty quickly. And the nice thing is we have a nice groove here that was built into the kit, so we don't have to like cut our own, which is problematic there. I punctured that for a bit, but it doesn't feel like it's quite ready to cut. A couple spots that seem a bit more resistant than others. So this is time consuming, but again, it's better to go slowly. And you can see I'm removing a tiny little bit. But it's better to do this slowly than to just jump right in. I'm pretty sure I've punctured it here. But I'm not ready to go whole hog and cut through just quite yet. Yeah, this is going to take a few passes. This is fairly thick plastic. There. All right, so I'm through here. Once you get the blade pretty far in, it should be fairly easy to, if you've etched it a few times to just slowly, that's pretty resistant actually still, to slowly turn the plastic. And the blade should, but is not, kind of cut through where you've already etched, where it's weakest. And let's try to get the blade out a little bit. It's not quite ready to cut elsewhere. Again, better safe and slow than losing a thumb or ruining this thing. Although, truthfully, this part right here, I mean, this needs to come off, but this is the shoulder that's going to be inside of a tube. So if this doesn't look particularly great, I mean, it's not a huge deal, but, geez, still, we don't need this to be amateur hour. This is fairly thick plastic, I will say. At least I'm not trying to cut through, like the whole thing. And again, I have used Dremel tools in the past to do this, but the consequence there is that blade goes through this plastic incredibly easily, and you can end up cutting entirely too much very easily. All right. Here to the part that I had cut through last time. It's just not quite ready to cut here, and I suspect it's because I'm kind of out of that seam a little bit on one side. Trying to cut through the thicker part of the plastic. Yeah. Well, let's put the blade in there again. Yeah, boy, this stuff's not fooling around. So this stuff, doing this, really wears out a blade very quickly. So maybe it's time to swap this thing out. You know, my blade is not pretty looking anymore, so that might be part of it. If you have never done this before, your knife should be able to, the blade should be able to come out nice and easily like that. Grab yourself a new one. There we go. Make sure it is nice and tight. I suspect that I'm going to go through like 3 or 4 blades on this particular project because there is an incredible amount to cut just on this. I mean, I could spend, cut through. I could spend a good half an hour cutting just the pieces off this, let alone the more advanced stuff, which at this rate, I don't know when I'm going to get to that. This is definitely time consuming. Well, the new blade is cutting better, and I'm getting more spots where I'm cutting through the plastic, but still not uniformly deep enough to, whoop, there's that section that I managed to cut through again. It's also worth noting, too, that most of the time, the way the construction works on these, the way the manufacturing works is there's a seam, like right there, there's a seam. That is usually the hardest thing to cut through because it's thicker. Now, typically, there aren't a whole lot of, let's get that out of the way. There aren't a whole lot of kits that I do in the club that require you to cut through plastic like this. There are a couple, and generally, that's work that I do. rather than you do, just because I don't need anybody losing fingers on my watch. Here we go. Looks like I got about half of it off or cut through at this point. Just this one spot, very, very stubborn spot right here. Boy, with a lot of these, and the plastic is thinner, but once you get the blade in, you can usually kind of like seesaw it back and forth like this, and it moves through the plastic pretty well. But this spot, I don't know, does not want to cut. And this video is run surprisingly long as it is, and there are two more big pieces to cut before I do anything more complicated. So yeah, I'm going to get through this one way or the other. Ooh, whoops. There we go. That was fun. This spot is still not completely cut through. Now you could kind of pull on this and make the plastic fatigue, but who knows what kind of break you're going to get there. So I'm going to cut etch on this a few more times. It's definitely that seam that is the problem here. And everything really slipped right there because I kind of connected two parts that were cut rather than anything else. Okay, well, that took just about forever, and I've still got two more bits before I wrap this up. Whenever you've cut things off here, this is actually, not to toot my own horn, but all that time I took, this is a pretty clean cut. But we definitely want to sand this down, and this is going to make an awful sound, just so everybody knows. Oh, that's awful. Ah, yeah. Okay, that was unpleasant. Anyway, yeah, that's actually, there's still a little bit of a burr there. Oh, okay. All right, that's better. This is not, basically you just don't want any jagged bits. This here is this whole thing is a shoulder that's going to get glued in, as I mentioned before. It doesn't really matter if this is jagged, except that you could certainly slice your hand up when you're working with this. So, well, that was pleasant. Yeah, I'm going to cut here and here, and then I've got, oh my goodness, I've got two more pieces to cut. This one hopefully will go faster. I have to cut the back end off of that, and this, I'm not entirely sure where I have to cut. I gotta look in the instructions to see where that goes. Blade disposal. Don't just throw these out. I mean, they do end up having to be disposed of, but just throwing it in a garbage can is a great way for somebody to like cut themselves up when they empty it. So I try to put it like inside something, inside some packaging. That's safer, I guess, at least for you, the consumer. So anyway, dispose of this properly. Thanks for watching. I will see you another time.